Here's a short story about my experience with dyslexia and how reading on my iPhone helped me get around it. When I was a kid, I loved books. The way they felt, the way they looked, being around them, the stories they held, everything. And I couldn't think of anything better than being a writer, actually creating the stories that went in those books. But that wasn't going to happen. And here's why. This is me about the time it was discovered that I had fine motor skill deficits and visual perception problems. I couldn't learn to cut, use scissors. I couldn't learn to read. I couldn't learn to do any of the things that I was supposed to be doing at that age. So I was tested. And turns out I was dyslexic. This is my mom. She was a teacher. She is the reason I got out of elementary and middle school because she worked with me tirelessly night after night after night to make sure of that. And more than anything, she is the reason I was able to learn the persistence that every dyslexic needs to get through life, much less school. Lots of kids like to joke that recess was their favorite subject, but with me, it's really the truth. And this is because so much that we did in class was so incredibly difficult for me. I couldn't focus. I couldn't copy things off a board. My spelling was terrible. Math was even worse. Even the books that I wanted to read were just way too difficult to read because here's what happened when I looked at a page. Words ran everywhere. They were fuzzy. It took an enormous amount of energy to focus. So I would be back to daydreaming and picking out animals from the clouds. When I was young, school was terribly difficult for me. Ironically, it was really, really difficult until I went away to college. When I went away to college, my grades went up pretty dramatically because for the first time, I could control the classes I took, which was a big deal, a really big deal. And I could control how I approached the class. And most importantly, I wasn't stuck in a class for 7 hours a day. I could spend as much time outside of class as I wanted to, as I could schedule in order to work on my assignments. I also learned that if I sat up close to the front, if I asked a gazillion questions, and if I bugged the hell out of the teacher during their or the professor during their office hours, that I didn't really have to do the reading. That I could learn by just talking to people, including my professor, about the information, about the subject matter, and that's sort of how I survived and learned to thrive as well when I went away to college. This despite this love of stories that I had, and despite feeling that I had stories I wanted to tell, I really didn't start thinking seriously about writing until I started reading books on my iPhone. And the reason that is because reading was just so absolutely difficult. And so, despite the fact that I kept feeling this compulsion that I had these stories I wanted to tell, I just didn't think that was possible. But then Apple introduced the iPhone, and along with that came iBooks, and a whole new form of reading opened up. And here's what happened. I began to read, and read well. And here's why. Researchers have found that many dyslexics have broader peripheral vision, therefore increasing the size of the font and reducing the size of the screen to the point where there are only a few words per line helps enormously with reading anyway. What this did for me was open up a world of authors like James Salter, Tobias Wolff, Mary Gateskill, Pam Houston. And more than anything, it led me to believe that I could write. The reading that I did on my iPhone because of the smaller screen led me to believe that I could write. And so I did. Riverside is about two young lovers chasing the American dream and the lengths to which they will go to protect it. It's a romantic suspense novel set in Austin, Texas in the early 90s. It's out on Amazon and iBooks in print and ebook form. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.